So in short, the map tells you who's building in the right places, and the report explains what's happening in some more depth.
This is 401k Specialist Editor-in-Chief Brian Anderson, and this is the 401k Specialist Podcast. There's a new report that should be of great interest to retirement plan advisors, and it's being released on April 8th by KWP Growth Partners. The inaugural Next Gen 401k report identifies 12 transformative trends that are shaping the future of retirement, putting the spotlight on 60 leading digital forward companies that are driving innovation in the workplace retirement plan space. We're excited to have Lisa Kottler and Will Prest joining us to provide a preview of this new report, which builds on the firm's previously released RetireTech map, which is a first-of-its-kind resource providing a clear, organized view of RetireTech companies and how they fit in. Will Prest is the managing partner for KWP Growth Partners, while Lisa Kottler is KWP's partner of strategic growth and innovation. Lisa and Will, welcome to the 401k Specialist Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Excited to be here.
All right. Well, let's start out with just a brief overview of what the Next Gen 401k report is and how it came about. Who's the report built for, and what makes it a blueprint for what comes next?
Well, what's kind of neat is we're coming up on the first year anniversary because Lisa and I had a conversation, and we did talk to you about the map that happened at Napa, where we realized, no one's really focusing on the challenger brands and the RetireTech in regards to the 401k business. And so the first thing was the map, which was, if you think about Google Earth and you took a Google Earth view and you look down, we realized there's kind of 9 neighborhoods. There's 9 categories. There's record keepers, there's employee engagement, small business, financial wellness, and such. As that started to take shape, we realized, and we came up with a framework, which was, who are the companies that are really helping us look around the corner, who are trying to make the industry better and more efficient, and really solve for really 4 things, which is, can more employers get access? Those that have access, can we drive a better participation rate? Can we boost engagement? And ultimately, the whole purpose of the retirement plan is, can we help for better retirement outcomes? So in essence, what the report did is, once we saw the map, which is what we started with, we realized and discovered that there were really 12 trends, which we can get into and discuss in a moment.
All right. Well, I'm curious now, how can a retirement plan advisor, a record keeper, or an asset manager use the report? How can it help them?
That's a great question, Brian. And I would even expand it a little bit, because I would say that most everyone in our ecosystem could potentially benefit from the insights. For the record keepers, it gives them an opportunity to see who's building around their infrastructure. How might they integrate or distribute or potentially even acquire, right, to accelerate their own innovation? And I'd say for advisors, it's really a tool to help them discover new platforms, new services, maybe new partners that can help them really differentiate their offering, broaden their services. And especially for those advisors who maybe have wanted to help improve the coverage gap, but it's been tough historically to do that profitably. But I think now with a lot of the innovation that we've had, they can certainly start to pursue that if they want. For the asset managers, it really helps them identify the platforms that are shaping participant behavior, that are influencing the outcomes, which is so important to them. So maybe it can help them better align their product and distribution strategy to where the market is heading. And lastly, I'd say, and this was an interesting one for us, is that the RetireTech companies themselves actually benefit from this. For them, it's kind of both a mirror and a map. They can benchmark their model, discover maybe potential collaboration opportunities, and just kind of better understand where their product fits within the ecosystem. And I would close with this. So I think the best compliment that we've gotten since we published this map in December came from a few of the RetireTech companies who told us, you know what, there are companies on this map that I didn't know about, and now we're in talks with them. Because that is exactly what we wanted, is to really truly help, or at least do our small part in bringing this whole ecosystem together. So to know now that some of these companies are collaborating with each other because of the map, or at least talking to each other, I should say, that was just the biggest compliment we could get.
I love that, how it's a mirror and a map. All right. Now I know that you've both made a point of stressing that this report is meant to encourage collaboration within the retirement ecosystem rather than competition. And that's how these newer RetireTech challenger brands are not trying to replace incumbents, but rather team up and complement them. Can you guys tell us a little bit more about this and how it can help close some of the gaps that exist today?
I'll build off of what Lisa said. What's really interesting is by pulling the map together and then realizing the trends that were coming from that, you could start to see that the industry had some patterns, that it isn't all fragmented and that they could connect. An example of that is when we were in front of some very large aggregators. One of the advisors, when we were speaking in the room, was worried about these fintechs and felt like they were a competitive threat. While and another advisor group thought it was really interesting, thought these aren't small companies that I would start with anyways, but they're a great farm team. They're going to help develop more companies and more savers and ultimately probably create greater opportunity for us really in the near future, which is kind of neat. Another example of collaboration that I've heard recently is that John Hancock is partnering with Swell, right? So that they can help them participate in the emerging market. John Hancock's great in the middle and large market. And by bringing those two together, they've decided to really do a partner versus a build from the inside, gets them there faster, gets them to a market that they'd like to be in. And thus, I think that's a great example of collaboration.
Now, I know we're not going to be able to go through all 12 of the trends identified in the new report, but I'm hoping that you can run through some of the key trends or highlights, maybe some of the innovations and market dynamics, along with the embedded solutions that are driving the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. We won't hit all 12, but I think some of the highlights, look, the first one I'll tell you is probably just kind of a no-brainer and maybe goes without saying, but AI will power the future. And that's probably the most obvious one that we'll talk about. And the rapid nature of that, I mean, it's only accelerating, but we're already seeing it. So if you look at this map, there are many companies on here who are now using AI for increasing efficiencies, smarter automation, personalization, which has been such a big, important topic in our industry. Now, with this advancing technology, we're going to be able to actually deliver on that. So, there's companies like Planport and Tiffin, and even a longtime innovator, Financial Finesse. They're all transforming operations, boosting engagement, doing all kinds of things with AI. And again, we'll only see that accelerate over time. I think another really big trend that we have observed and seen, and you mentioned it in your question, the embedded solutions. To Will's point, when he said that one of the advisors told us that the map was really just noise, in some ways, you could argue maybe there's some truth to that because it's 60 logos on a page across 9 categories. And you're like, where's the connectivity? Like, how does this all come together? But we're starting to see that more and more, that there are connection points. And I think these embedded solutions are a great example of that. In fact, one of the partnerships on there kind of illustrates 2 of our trends, both the embedded solutions as well as distribution as a competitive edge, where you have Guideline and Gusto who came together. So Guideline, really has become the largest digital record keeper in our business, struck a partnership with Gusto many years ago, which was brilliant because Guideline was looking for small business owners. And what they did was embed their solution at a digital payroll provider, which is where their target clients already sit. So it's just a really smart way. The more you can have a great product, but if you don't have the right distribution strategies and channels, it's really not going to matter. And so building distribution into design is really critical. And I think that was a great example. But again, that partnership shows how collaboration can really fuel growth and how coming together can really extend the ecosystem and make it better for all. And then one other I'd say is human-centered design is really getting traction. And this is a critical thing because in our industry, like many others, but ours in particular, we use a lot of jargon, a lot of lingo, and we could certainly do a better job of creating and designing our websites and our customer interface, the UX, UI. And for those companies that focus on human-centered design, where they strip out the jargon and really create simple and intuitive ways for people to engage, you see adoption rates and engagement just really climb. So those are probably four of the bigger trends that we're seeing.
All right. Now, from a little bit different angle, what can investors or acquirers learn from not only the trends in the report, but also from the RetireTech map?
Yeah, I like that question. I think investors and acquirers can use the report and the map as both a lens and a radar, because these tools aren't just snapshots of what's happening. It's really showing where the market's going and helping them look around the corner. To build off what Lisa said, I think from an investment perspective, just understanding what those 12 trends are and how they fit together, because they're not really in isolation. They do fit together, and they're not just buzzwords. I think they're really signaling what's starting to shift. On the acquisition side, it's really, this could be seen as a pipeline of potential partners. Maybe it's a tuck-in, maybe it's an acquisition. So in short, the map tells you who's building in the right places, and the report kind of explains what's happening in some more depth. I think what's interesting, both really building off Lisa and my experience of not only working for big brands, but also having been a startup, which is the very different types of experiences.
Yes.
Very different. And maybe for a different podcast, I think we've built a playbook because there's really a number of different players in there. There's the fintechs and how they want to get to market, how they have to build distribution, and frankly, how they have to get in the door. And then there's the investors who are trying to figure out who should they bet on and where is it going to work. And ultimately, there's maybe the large legacy firms that have the distribution and need this. So there's a number of different players, and the playbook really helps look at each of the players' expectations and needs, and then figure out what's the mutual benefit and the mutual way and the way to get to market. And as an example, if you're one of these fintechs on the map, you have a heavy lift. You have to figure out how to do an enterprise sale really well and connect with what the needs and the requirements are of that enterprise. You have to then get inside, if that's successful, and figure out how you integrate into the business, how you're a value add to them. And then in most of these businesses, once you're inside, then the work starts over again, which is how do you really engage the plan and the plan participants so that you get the traction and you get the outcome that you want. So our playbook really takes a look at those different players and what those players need and how to create a Venn diagram so that there's commonality. Because without that discussion, without that third party, it's easy to make assumptions and assume what my level of success would be is the same as this other party's, and it's really not.
And to add to that, one thing we see too, look, there aren't a lot of VCs that are focused in retirement, right? There just aren't that many out there. But the ones who are, we know some of those, and they find this map helpful for sure, because it takes a lot to get out there and find all these companies. And by the way, we know right after we published this map, look, we called it 1.0 for a reason. We knew we wouldn't capture everyone. I mean, it's hard to do. Some were even still in stealth mode when we were publishing. So it's hard to get out there and know them all. But we probably had 10 or 15 firms, at least in the first week after we published, who reached out, raised their hand and said, hey, we should be on your map. So again, it's hard. And these VCs can't always keep up, so they appreciate it. But we've also heard from some corporate VCs that they have multiple business lines, and retirement's usually not at the top of their list. And so to the degree that, this map and report can help them understand more on the retirement side, we've heard really positive things about that, because it's just not always their area of expertise.
Makes a lot of sense. Before we wrap up, can you share anything that maybe surprised you as you researched this report? What were you maybe not expecting to find?
I think it's really the range of approaches and creativity and inventiveness. If you look at just, say, financial wellness as a category, we have 15 companies on there. Their starting point was very different. Like if you take one company, they're very focused on, it seemed, blue collar, gray collar, and ensuring that they kept the integrity of their retirement savings by not making silly mistakes with payday loans and such. And so it's very focused on lending and making smart choices and things like that. Another one is a really cool app that seems like it's much more focused on younger participants, mobile, and investing. It's almost like the hood inside of the retirement plan world. And then there's others that are really kind of full service. They have education, they have advisors on the phones, they have programs. It's just interesting how they took very different approaches. And then once they sort of landed on a niche or a specific service they're really good at, they've expanded. But they all start from different places.
Yeah, for me, there were certainly some surprises in the making of the map. But for me, honestly, the biggest surprise was the reaction to the map. And I don't mean that to sound self-serving. It truly was like, look, I left NFP years ago to go jump into this whole fintech and startup world without really knowing what I was going to do with it. And over those years, Will and I had always talked. He was one of my kind of fintech buddies, and we knew we were excited about this. We knew this was of interest to us, and we wanted to build it and create it because no one had, and we thought it would be great to offer that. But look, we honestly didn't know, would other people be interested? I know a few people, but I like that probably would, but really we didn't know. And so it was almost a visceral reaction from some, and there was so much enthusiasm around it, and which was really exciting. And I'm glad we did it. But I'm particularly excited, as I said, about how the RetireTechs now, some of them are talking to each other. Now we have some of the legacy firms talking to the RetireTechs because of it. It's helping expose and get that industry conversation started. Because at the end of the day, Will and I both genuinely want to see this industry move forward and do our part that we can to help with that. So that was really, I think, for me, the biggest surprise.
Well, it had to be very gratifying to see the reaction from the industry. That's great. And I can't wait to check out the report. Once it's officially out on April 8th, we will have a link to our coverage of the Next Gen 401k report on the homepage for this episode. So thanks so much, Lisa Kottler and Will Prest from KWP Growth Partners, for joining us today to discuss it on the 401k Specialist Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.